Welcome to the UpKeep Pledge Pros Podcast, a podcast dedicated to unmatched value and unwavering support for our community and our customers. Today, we have Josh Perrault, who is an UpKeep customer and is also the Vice President of Facilities and Maintenance for Raceway Car Washes. Sorry. Josh, welcome.
Hey, Brian, glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We know you're an UpKeep customer now. Raceway is a massive chain. They have tons and tons of car washes. Very reliable outfits, I've heard, and lots of good value there. I mean, I use car washes all the time. I live in Maryland, so we're getting the salt, the snow, the pollen. I mean, everything. So it's awesome. So before we get into upkeep and the uniqueness of the business that you're leading as it pertains to maintaining and commissioning all these different types of car washes and different types of machines and environments and things. Tell us a little bit about where you started in industry, a little bit of backstory, right, and then ultimately where you arrived today as the vice president of facilities and maintenance for Raceway Car Washes.
Sure. No. Again, thank you, Brian, for having me. So my background is a sports background, actually. I was a professional baseball player, and I played in minor leagues within the Orioles, Washington Nationals, and Diamondback organization. So I know a lot about the I-95 corridor where you're from on in Maryland, playing in Fredericksburg, Bowie, all those type of things. So
Oh yeah.
I know what you're dealing with out there with that weather. So any leads and some car washes, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. But
Yeah, man. Let's put one up, man.
yeah. So, but I stopped playing baseball 2010. Worked with my wife's side of the family in a turf production. So we were farmers.
Cool.
Got to understand all the different things regarding hydraulics, pneumatics, just the day-to-day stuff that had to do with farming. But eventually, family started to develop and had to get into a long-term career. And I locked on to a group who was a private equity group that really started investing in car washes. And there was a car wash that needed to be developed in South Lake Tahoe in California. And I knew the president. I raised my hand and says, I don't know a foggiest thing about car washes, but you know what? I can read, I can ask questions, and I can get this thing done for you. And he gave me the opportunity. I built the car wash. And from there, that gave me opportunities to work on the maintenance and facility side of things. Also gave me more opportunities to do some bigger capital improvements for the car washes because we were really expanding when I jumped over in 2014. And as that grew, that just my responsibilities just continued to enhance.
Sure.
Um, so today we're 44 car washes scattered around the Southwest from Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and California.
Nice.
And we're kind of a middle player in the industry right now, but we have ambitions to be a big player going forward. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Car washes have been popping up everywhere. I mean, it's
yeah,
becoming a very lucrative business venture.
absolutely.
And you think inherently of car washes when I go through them, because I use them, I'm always looking at all the PLCs, the pneumatic controls, the motors that are sopping wet, sitting in water,
Yep.
all your stainless steel fixtures, all the drive hydraulic motors, all that stuff. And me being a maintenance professional the last 20 years, building programs, turning wrenches, all that stuff. Immediately in my mind, I start going, I wonder how they maintain. I wonder what their frequency for that is. I wonder what type of grease they use in that bearing. I wonder, right? So, yeah, I hear you. It's an undertaking, right? It's an extremely high wear environment. It's an extremely consumable based environment with all your soaps and your cleaners and those things interactions with your actual assets and the humidity environment. Your electric motors need to be total enclosed fan cooled. You need to have all these things in play to keep your machines well
Yeah.
operating. What would you say? I know I touched on a couple things, but what would you say as far as maintaining the individual locations is probably the biggest headache?
I mean, you spoke to it really well. I mean, the environments that our equipments operate in are not ideal.
Right.
Um, we are taking everybody's trash and putting it on our equipment at the end of the day.
That's right.
The people are picking up the grime on the road. You're coming into a tunnel and
Flinging it all over the place.
hanging it on there. So you think we'd be clean, right? Because we're a car wash, but we're letting our guests go away clean, but we're taking all that.
Sure.
And our accountings would say that our depreciation schedule on this equipment's 10 years. Well, good luck
Yeah, right.
with the environments that we're dealing with. So the biggest thing that we have to do on our end is the preventative care. At
Sure.
the end of the day, we have to be religious about going in there and making sure we're checking those bearings all the time, making sure our pivot bearings are working well on our wraps, so we're not going to bind up and potentially, canoe a car on their hood because the thing didn't extend the way it should have. We're monitoring all of our drying systems, making sure that those 15 horsepower motors are working, because if one is out, the quality of the drying of that car, which is one of the last things that our guests are going to notice, is going to suffer. And if we're, a little bit of a sneak peek of what our industry really is, we are a subscription business.
Sure.
We are pushing people to be able to go to the membership side. So when they come consistently, the average customer comes about 2 to 3 times. If we can make sure that we can provide that customer experience over time, it only enhances the value proposition that we give them. So preventative care is so and so important, making sure that every single component of that wash from the
Right.
beginning function as it should.
Yeah. When I think about car washes, um, I view them as a service business, right? But they're also more like a hospitality business, right? And in hospitality, hotels and things like that, there's two things that you're in combat against. It's the reduction in life of your assets, right? But also the customer satisfaction. And by having assets that are unreliable and maybe you don't change your brushes in the right amount of time, and it doesn't have the right application pressure to actually clean the dirt off the side of your car, so you run through and one side of your car is dirty. So you have all this wear, all this need to maintain going on, but at the same time, you have to maintain a customer's satisfaction and experience. Um, so I think of car wash as like hospitality, where you're on the hook for two things. Someone being like, "My car's not clean. I paid $30. It's through here. It's not clean." And then meanwhile, you're like, "Well, cool. Now their car's not clean. They're upset, and I also have a broken thing."
Right.
Right. So it's a double-edged sword, but with the appropriate strategy, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
you can be ahead of those things. And I'll be honest with you, I've been in a car wash line. I'm not going to say the name. It's not Raceway. I've been in a car wash line where the thing broke 2 cars in front of me, and then they have to stop the track. They have to get everybody to back out of it, and it's just a mess. And
Yep. It happens daily. I mean, it happens to us. I mean, I
yeah,
wish it didn't. And that's why we go through a lot of coaching, and especially on the operations team. And when I say operations team, it's the guys in the front facing with our guests. This is how you got to communicate with them when that
yes,
happens. A lot of times that gives us opportunities to really endear ourselves to our guests, is when, hey, we messed up. How can we fix it?
right,
But as it relates to our maintenance reliability operations team on our end, it's, guys, we got to keep this thing running. This is the money maker. If it's not running 8 to 10 hours a day, guys, we're in trouble.
right,
So, yeah.
yeah. And all the choices that you make as it pertains to the type of lubricants, the intervals you choose to do on your machines, right? The materials you choose to install um, can all either severely hinder your ability to provide that service uh, or make it extremely reliable, right? Take maintenance out of it.
Mhm.
Just the sheer decision making and the design characteristics that you wish to work within are really going to set that reliability, and then we maintain that reliable piece of equipment that we've designed to be the right thing, right? Um,
Yeah.
so talking a little bit about upkeep, um, what would you say if, as it pertains to car washes, how has upkeep been kind of a game changer, or something that or a way that it has really boosted your ability to stay on top of things, whether preventive, corrective, maybe communication, maybe inventory, maybe root cause failure analysis, whatever. What do you think has been the top thing across the sites that are leveraging the system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, backing up a little bit, when I got into this industry, wasn't trained in this industry, right? I just just figuring it out as I go. Initially, I was a one-man shop who relied on third-party vendors to be able to maintain our equipment.
Sure.
As we grew, we realized, one, the cost to do that is prohibitive. The response time is unacceptable as we're relating back to our guests. So we knew pretty quickly as we scaled that we are going to have to build our own internal team. But when you have an internal team, you got to figure out how to communicate. What's the most effective way to communicate? Is it through text? Is it through phone calls? Is it through emails? All these different mediums that you can potentially communicate through Slack. Eventually, your mind wants to explode, because where is that?
Right.
There was a big thing that I developed early on. Say, I'm going to communicate strictly regarding the maintenance issues through a simple spreadsheet on Google Sheets.
Mhm.
I'll communicate them all the tabs, each one's that have an individual tab, and you're going to communicate team back to me, and then I'll use this and I'll query that report and I'll send it out to the different vendors, right? But that worked for like 10 stores.
Sounds a lot of work for you, man.
Oh yeah, that worked for 10 stores, but then all of a sudden, oh man, that's not scalable, right? That's
That's
one of
right.
the things that we talk about here right now is if we want to get up to 200 stores, whatever we do, it's got to be scalable.
That's right.
So we had to find a tool that was going to equip us to be able to communicate well across the whole board, across all regions. What's going on with our equipment? We need to know it right away. So there was a technician that we had at the time who came from another car wash industry, had experience with upkeep, and said, "Hey, Josh, you need to investigate these guys and see if they can bring any value to what we're doing." And so we had initial conversations, and the value proposition that you guys brought to us was like, "Man, this is exactly what we need to do. This is what's going to take us to the next level." And so we it's probably going on a year and a half, maybe in 2 years now that we're on upkeep. One of the biggest things early on that was of value to us was just the work order analytics. Like how many work orders are being pushed out to this location? What's the hours? We're tracking hours of these different technicians. How long is it taking to be able to get these different tasks done? It's giving us the insights that we can say, hey, this is something that we need to develop a training around because we need to get better at. So that type of information started coming in. One recommendation I would do it for your listeners here early on, understand like what you really want to measure. Because you can measure a whole bunch of stuff, but what's your critical assets that you really need to know and really make sure that you understand? And if you're a company of scale that has those type of assets across the whole board, make sure your naming conventions and all that different types of stuff are the same, right? So that it's easy to communicate across different areas, markets, people, etc. So that's something that we're still kind of working on, and hopefully through that endeavor, we're going to be able to get a little bit more sophisticated understanding of like our downtime, what's the cost versus replacement, all that type of stuff. We're going to get to, but right now we're really just driving in on just work order activity, parts and consumption. That's another huge thing. We have now a whole year and a half of data saying, okay, these are the parts that we use. This is the volume that we use of those parts. We need to make sure in our warehousing space that we have those and use those numbers also to try to get some leverage with our vendors. Maybe we can get some scale or some volume discounts, et cetera, like that. So those are some things that we're working on right now. But every day I just want to go. I mean, there's so much in there in upkeep that you can leverage, and you just want to get there, and we're working towards it. But got to lay a good foundation early on
Yes.
for doing that. So
Yes, you have to prioritize, right? And you have to understand the fundamentals have to be in place. We a lot of our competitors like to push all the fancy cool stuff. It's like, yeah, it's great, it's amazing, but the customer is not going to know how to leverage any of that if they don't have the fundamentals in place.
yep, yep.
And what I hear when I hear this from you is I hear that, and it's a very common thing that happens with organizations that are really trying um, to grow, and it's you're creating a common language amongst your business, right?
Mhm.
And that language is in the form of asset nomenclature, parts management, location management, hierarchy, criticality, so that when Texas is talking about a pump, it's called the exact same thing in Arizona, right? And you create this common language, and having a common language in your CMMS allows you to train better. Because when
Absolutely.
you write a training and you're at the Texas facility writing a training, you know it's going to apply to Arizona, to California, to whoever, right? Because everything is the same. And then ultimately, Josh, what this helps you with long term is when you start to create this common language, you start to build out this information, you will know when you go to commission a new raceway what you shouldn't do,
Absolutely.
right? So you're taking the context of your assets as you measure, as you perform maintenance, as you do the work, and you make sure that the more raceways you build, the less maintenance you have to do. because at the end of the day, we don't want to do maintenance,
Yep.
right? Maintenance is the byproduct of design.
Hmm.
So if we can design things by the past issues we've had, now we can reduce our maintenance cost over time, right? Because essentially, your initial purchase cost is a small fraction of the life cycle cost of that machine.
Right.
And in upkeep, when you get to the point when you start leveraging your replacement asset values, you can start to understand cost-effective maintenance,
Mhm.
right? We're doing the right work. Now, is the right work cost-effective in relation to the value of the asset? If it is, great. Then set your threshold. I don't want to be doing more than 50% of the cost of this asset or 25 or 10 or whatever. So that's wonderful. Parts and spare parts management is a huge one. Lots of people struggle with spare parts management.
You bet. That's
Generally,
exactly what we're going through right now. Is I got a warehouse manager in two markets, and initially when we started this thing, it's like, okay, what do we bring in, right? It's someone. Let me just stick my finger in the air, and this is what I'm going to bring in.
yeah.
Now I have the data, and now I can. It's a cash flow management thing. Says I only need, I use 10 of this, divide this by 12, 52 weeks. Okay, we may need to make sure that we have at least this that's going to cover us.
Hmm.
No more, no less, right?
Right.
But if you're just going by whim, one, you'll catch yourself in a situation where you're going to have some downtime. That's unfortunate. Or you're just going to have parts just sitting on a shelf, which that's just not the best use of cash. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, another thing too is this dilemma is when people rely heavily on the manufacturer's recommendations. Now, look, manufacturer recommendations are a recommendation, but
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, you're going to get two things. You're either going to be over maintaining things so that they can get spare parts out of you, or you're going to under maintain things so they can sell you a service contract. So it's a fine line with manufacturer recommendation. The best way, in my opinion, is condition based, right? What you're doing. Say, hey, okay, I know this is going to last maybe this long. I'm going to buy this many and two extra.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to work for 3 months and understand that actual condition of replacement. And then I'm going to modify my min and max quantities and we're going to ride it just like that. We're going to be replacing this filter 2 weeks before it fails,
Mhm.
right? So that we're getting the maximum life out of that component, but before it becomes a problem, you
You
know?
bet. That's what's great about upkeep. You have that. If you
Yeah.
set it up right and you work at it, you have that data. It's not guesswork. It's there.
Right.
Go get it.
Right.
So
Are you leveraging any contractors for any kind of like high risk or specific skill set work at the moment?
as of right now, it's more market based. So some of our smaller markets where a little bit difficult more to build up a team per se, that we'll have to rely on them. But most of the time it's internal. We're handling most of it. So
Right.
and that's a big difficulty that we have right now is finding the people who are essentially a jack of all trades, can be able to handle the pneumatics, the hydraulics, the controls, the high voltage stuff that we have to deal with. Finding those type of people to be able to place them and feel comfortable that they can address all the issues that come about on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, we're internal. That's where we have to drive to.
Yeah.
And last resort is if we have to go to those third-party companies.
Right. Yeah. So thinking about that skill set, right? That's going to be very difficult to find someone with all of that skill set. When I think of that, what you've mentioned, I think of two skill sets. I think of like a facilities millwright type technical trade, and then I think of an industrial electrician technical trade, like having those two teams. Because the industrial electricians, they're not going to be versed in the pneumatics, the bulwark of bearings and shaft alignment, your chain drives and all that, right?
Right.
But a millwright will.
Mhm.
Um, and that's I mean, millwright is a great skilled trade. I mean, they are very, very versed in all of that type of industry, heavy industrial industry.
Yeah.
Um, that's great. Do you guys have like any type of like, I know we talked a little about condition before we got on the call, but like, do you ever like test pumps, test motors on a schedule or anything like that?
Yeah, so at a small scale, we're doing that right now.
Okay.
And we're actually thinking about, okay, how about actually, you know, a lot of this equipment here is not rocket science that we're dealing with. They translate into other industries. So
Sure.
what can we find some value here in terms of developing our own, Can we leverage the scale that we do in different things and develop our own systems or our own pieces of equipment? So a lot of our testings are revolved around that, which is
Nice.
nice. We've developed our own prep chem stations and different things like that, where we find, us developing it is at a greater discount. And I think the quality is a lot better when we're doing it. But yeah, but there's other things that we're testing, our cloth, managing that, what's the proper time to replace and to a point where we're not going to get to, replace it too early, but definitely can't get it too late.
That's right.
Some serious wash quality issues there. So a lot of those things that are being tested, but the more and more we want to do more of that
Right.
um, forward.
Now, what about your wastewater management?
Mhm.
So I've worked in heavy construction industry and all that, and we always had to have indictments and containment for any washed off oil, grease, right? So it would be contained, and then it would be pumped out and disposed of properly. Do you have on-site containment, or is it treated then goes into regular municipal like sewer? How's it work?
Both. Both. So we're a value add company. So we technically don't build our stores. We buy existing operations and overlay our business model on top of it.
Okay,
So a lot of times we're at the what did the previous operator build or do? So some of our stores do have reclamation systems in there, which will go through an underground treatment system, and then we pump it back in and use it for specific applications like high pressures on our side rocker panels, or just use them as wet downs for our brushes. But some don't have them.
right,
But going forward, that's going to be a more and more of play in within the industry as water costs are going up. Conservation is going to be more and more critical. So those systems are developing, and if we develop them, we have to put those in there. If
sure,
we or they have to go in there.
right.
Um, so it's a little bit split with us right now, but
Are your teams maintaining those systems, or do you contract
uh,
that out?
no, we maintain them.
Oh,
We
cool.
maintain them. And a lot of the responsibilities day to day. So we have to rely on our operations team to do the simple tasks, clean out the filters, do different things to ensure
Good,
that. So another
good.
thing we've done with Upkeep is not just keeping it within the facilities and maintenance team. We pushed it out to the whole operations team.
The request function.
Request function, but we also gave them technician status.
Oh, wow.
We understood the value that, hey, we have the horsepowers on the operations team. We have 400 people that are working day to day at the site. Maintenance team, we have about 2 to 3 techs per location, right? They can only be at different places at any given time.
Right.
We knew that to really make this happen, we have to get the operations team on board. So there's tasks that we request them to do. So we've created PMs for them to go through on a daily basis to make sure that they're looking at different things throughout the day to ensure that the car wash is operating. And if it's not, hey, can we communicate through Upkeep to see if they can address the issue right away themselves, or does that trigger a work order that we got to get a technician over there to address? So
Right.
something we've done over the last year, and it's worth the cost. It's definitely worth the cost to bring those guys in, and not more than just the request function, but actually get them to the technician side so they can actually do some things.
Yeah, I mean that takes a lot of trust from the organization, right? Because it's your data quality that's going to suffer if it's not done right, right?
Right.
But it is a mature benchmark to leverage operator tasks, right? Operator tasks are clean and adjust,
Yeah.
visually inspect, right? They're already there. You might as well, if you
Use
have
them.
if you have the structured and you have the repeatable processes written, and they understand how to close them out, add their notes, take pictures, whatever. Use them. They're already there. I write so many inspections and preventive maintenance strategies and tasks, and I leverage the operators constantly. They're already there, right? Um, which is great. Of
You'll find that little diamond in the rough who likes maintenance.
course,
Yeah, I want to try to pivot my career. I want to get into something, and you can find them and say, "Man, let's go after them. Let's train them up."
you have to. You
And
don't want to lose that.
absolutely,
You don't want to lose that because I've done it as well. I find operators because so one thing that I don't want to give away all my secrets here. I'd love to tell you offline, but
yeah,
um, one of the things that I'm very very adamant about when writing preventive maintenance tasks is the number one task. The very first task on every PM as it's pertained to a technician is talk to the operator. Ask the operator, has the machine been performing its function? Did they notice any anomalies? Right? So it does two things. it creates a relationship between operators and maintenance. So now they have to talk to each other. And
Right.
two, you're able to generate more corrective work, which leads to better preventive maintenance strategies to eliminate defects because the operator, if something's wrong, they're going to say it. But if a
Absolutely.
technician just shows up and starts doing his thing, the operator's not there or he doesn't talk to that guy, that operator could have experienced three or four things that could have been a window into a real problem that the technician now could then address. Um, it's super important.
So
And
important.
I don't know, are you maybe at some point we can talk as you expand about having your system or your strategies evaluated by our internal expert team and we can
Yeah.
actually help you
Dude, that'd be great.
move even further, particularly in the ways of eliminating defects. Like you had mentioned that you guys sometimes change the design of things on your own because you're like, why are we using this chain coupler when we're in a washing machine, right? It's like, why would we use that? We could change it and change it, whatever. So that's something to think about.
Yeah.
Um, so as far as adoption, so technicians leveraging the system, are you
Mhm.
seeing good adoption, meaning technicians are tracking their hours, they're tracking parts, they're all that.
Yeah. So in fact, we incentivize them based on adoption.
Good.
Uh,
I did too.
yeah. So I told these guys early on, this is an investment. This is a serious investment, and we tell these guys all the time, say, there's two things. We're going to be equipped and prepared. Equipped is on my end. I'm going to give you the tools that you need to go out there and do your job. But on the reverse side, you're going to be prepared to be able to go execute once you have it. Okay. And so with upkeep, I told the guys early on, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it all in. Because there's so many examples of where you're going to, you got all this cool thing. They can promise you the world with this application, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get into it and you leverage it about 20%, right?
Well, some
Eventually,
a lot less than
eventually,
that.
yeah, eventually it just goes away, right? I say, guys, we're not going to do that. That's not me. I might as well just stay on Google Sheets if we're not going to use this,
That's
right?
right.
So I told these guys, we're going to be all in. If we do this, we're going to be all in. And it got to the point where I said, I see the value in this. So we're going to roll this in operations. And that just, the cost went up, but the value back to us,
Correct.
it's paid for itself.
Yes.
So things that we've done in terms of just making sure they're adopting is we're matching up their clocked in hours versus what they're showing on their upkeep hours when they're locked into work orders. And we said, hey, you need to be at a certain percentage, or you're going to lose some incentives on based on that type of stuff. We're always throwing up their statistics of what they're getting done so they can
Gotta
see,
you gotta
see
have a
them.
scoreboard. You gotta know where you are, right?
We gamify this thing.
That's right.
Um, so yeah, adoption is crucial, and they're doing great. They're doing fantastic. I couldn't be more pleased with the team that we've developed, and I look forward to what we're going to be going forward. In fact, I love it. I got a book right here. It sits on my desk the whole time. Asset operations. We got to pivot our minds to be asset managers. We're just not guys who go out and doing tasks. We got assets. Each one of our stores has about 100, 120 assets that we want to measure. We want to
Yeah.
measure. So one of those things going down, it's going to affect the quality of our guest car.
Yeah.
And so it's just not going knocking this down get off, but I want to know those notes. I want to know what you're seeing. I
Yeah.
want to know maybe what are the root causes that causing this thing to fail that we can go get addressed. How
Yeah.
are you communicating to maybe the technicians that's going to come behind you, and are they going to understand the story of what you've been working on? You have that, but you got to do it.
That's right.
So
That's
I'm,
right.
I'm I'm pleased with my guys what they're doing, but we only have, there's so much more that we can grow.
Yeah. So I've led many, many maintenance and reliability departments, and whenever I show up to a new one, you better believe their pay is going to be based off their maintenance wrench turning time. And I always had, well, you have to do a capacity analysis first, right? You have to know how efficient is a technician, right? Based on the work you're scheduling them. Because some people like to say, like I had this conversation yesterday with some friends, JD Solomon and Bob Latino, and it's like everyone's like, oh, we're going to plan 100% of our work. It's like, okay, well, your technicians are only 20% effective.
Right,
So you're planning 100% of their day, and they're only getting 20% of their day. That means in one day's worth of volume, that takes them a week.
right.
And if you don't understand the capacity of each technician and the jobs that they're doing, the job plans, the time, the part, whatever, you
Mhm.
can't you can't say that you're planning all this work, right? So
Right,
when you understand that planned time and you know, okay, if I assign Billy 9 work orders, and that equates to 7.5 hours, right? It's a full day for him.
right, right.
I'm not going to assign 25 hours worth of work.
Right. Exactly right.
and expect Billy to be able to do it in an 8 hour day.
I mean, there's another functionality within Upkeep. Initially, once you guys approve it, once a manager approves a work order, but what's one of those things you can put in there? Estimated hours.
That's
What
right.
do you think it's going to take to get that job done? Leverage it.
Of
Because
course.
you generate a report that says, okay, I got all this work and I need to get it done, but I can't schedule my guy 80 hours. It's just, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, or the technician might come back and say, "Hey, it was estimated 5, but we didn't know that this one particular bolt corrodes its ass off into the foundation, and there's no way to get the nut off of it, so we got to add an hour."
Yep. And then so
Or
that's a learning process. So then the
yes,
manager can look at that and say, oh, I need to pivot. I need to adjust. And
yes,
all that information is in Upkeep and you can leverage it and it just makes your job so much more effective.
right. So last like question before we get into how people can connect with you, um, long term, as you're bringing more and more of these sites, and I'm sure you will, online. Um, Labor constraints are probably still going to be a bit of a plague for you, right? That's just a reality. Are there any thoughts in bringing in any kind of CT current transducers, voltage management, bearing management, remote monitoring of things, so you can, when your teams are out doing the work, you're still have an eye on certain critical pieces of machinery within your facilities. Is there any thoughts on that long term?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where you have to go. I mean, you're getting from reactive to preventative, and then you're getting to predictive. You're getting
Proactive, yeah.
proactive. So we do have a little bit of that functionality now outside of Upkeep just because of the equipment from the vendors, et cetera.
PLC controls,
But it's so sparse. It's
yeah,
sparse out. Like eventually, I only have so many hours a day. I'm not going to go log into
sure,
every one to check that out. So we got to figure out, okay, how we're going to integrate this into one location.
sure.
So that's something in the future that we're going to do. I imagine probably about 2 years out from that. Right now, we're really driving into the asset documentation, getting really, really, really good on that.
Have to.
Putting all the information that has to go into that asset and really start developing the trainings around that. For instance, how are you going to replace a asset within Upkeep, right? Got to know how to do it. I'm not going to be the guy going to do it. When you have 120 assets at a store and you replace one, you got a technician got to know how to do that. So a lot of trainings that are eventually going to have to be developed. But once we get all those processes done, then that's going to be the next step is how can we get all those meters, I guess, or all those different PLCs and things talking to each other, talking to Upkeep, so that we can take that to the next level. So
Yeah,
that,
it's definitely a complement of your strategy, right?
mhm,
But as we said earlier in the talk, is that strategy and that foundation has to be there.
absolutely.
If you walk in and just start relying on all this whatever, you're going to fail. You are going to fail. There's no question about it. The approach that you've taken is very, very nice to hear. Um, and it's very, very good because we talk to outside of Upkeep, like I've been a consultant and all that stuff. Like you talk to so many places and it's like everybody wants this easy button to push. You know what I mean? It's like, I got so much stuff, like I just can't deal with it, just whatever. It's like, hey man, you're paid to do this thing. You're the maintenance manager, you're the facilities director, you're whatever. It's your baby. You got to get your arms around it. And if you can't, leave because you're just killing everything below you.
Yep.
And if you can't navigate the organization, like I hear all the times, like, oh, the guy, I can't get money. They can't. It's like when you don't know how to communicate.
Mhm.
It's very simple, right?
That's right.
Um, Customer satisfaction is related to a dollar sign. Asset life cycle is related to a dollar sign. The water draining out of the floor and running into the storm drain that shouldn't be is a dollar sign.
Yep.
So it's very
Absolutely.
simple.
Absolutely, man. That's what gets me excited about this. I'm not a guy, I like to go out there and do some electrical and all that type of stuff, but what gets me excited is seeing these guys going out there and solving problems and
Yeah,
then also seeing what value they bring back to the
of course.
organization.
Yeah,
In the industry, it's easy to say, oh, I just did my thing, I left, and I didn't really do much of anything, right? No, you guys are super, super critical to that bottom line. In fact, I would say you're super, super critical to the top line,
of
right?
course.
You're there and you're seeing things and you're getting those addressed and you make that car wash happen the way it should every single time. That just gives our operators the ability to turn over a single wash guest to a membership, and you just added massive value to the company.
Yeah, of
Just
course.
see that you were able to develop that store.
Yeah, they need to see it, right? They need to hear it from people like you, right? Your job, when I was the head of maintenance for a multi-million dollar company, my job was to enable their success, right?
That-
And I always say this with upkeep. Upkeep enables the way work is actually done. And like we're just enablers. That's our whole job. Hey, technician, is something in your way? I'll get it out of your way and we'll make sure you can do what you're supposed to do in a timely, effective, and efficient manner. And I will continue to get things out of your way and enable your process, you know.
What makes this side of the industry so fun. And it's so exciting.
I love it. Before I came to Upkeep, I worked for Caterpillar. I was in the Navy, a flight deck troubleshooter. Uh,
Awesome.
I've been a maintenance manager, director of maintenance and reliability. I've been the head of maintenance, all the executive level, like all that stuff. And I miss it. I like working for Upkeep because I've been an Upkeep customer. I've implemented Upkeep many places. Um, but I do miss flying around the country and talking to my engineering teams, my maintenance teams, and pepping them up and getting after it, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's a good time. It's a
Yeah,
good time.
my wife's grandfather gave me one advice. He was a farmer down here, and I tried to instill it in my guys. It says the best fertilizer is your shadow, he said. And what he meant by that, you have to be around, right? You have to be around, you have to see it, and you have to go out there and make the adjustments of what you're seeing. And that's going to make that crop grow. But then I told him, like, oh, how's that scalable? And the way that's scalable is you got to make sure that you're teaching what you know to the next, to the next, to the next, so that you're making your shadow that much bigger and
Yeah.
bigger, bigger.
Yeah.
And then you see the reward and the yield
And
on
you
that.
have to take care of and protect that shadow.
Absolutely
And
right.
don't let that shadow, become um disgruntled and it's work, man.
Yeah.
It's work for sure.
But
It's funny.
that's part of it. It's so rewarding when you do it right.
Yes, 100%. I had I forget where it was. It might have been on CMMS radio with Greg Christensen maybe like a year ago, but we were talking about the managing by walking around, right? And
Mhm.
we were talking about, different things and people are like, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong, blah blah." It's like I'm speaking from manufacturing and it applies to everything, right?
Mhm.
All of your answers are out there on the shop floor.
Yep.
You just got to get your ass up and go
Yep.
out there and be the leader and the
Absolutely.
enabler that your team needs you to be. If you're a maintenance manager or you're a maintenance supervisor and you're in your office most of the day, either your leadership above you is having you do rudimentary things that are not required of your job, or you yourself are choosing not to go out and be a part of the team.
Yep.
There's got to be a healthy split. There has to be because your team
Yeah.
has to see you,
That's so true.
you know? It's just wild.
Man, that's so good.
You got to I always say, get your ass up,
Yep.
go, go out
Absolutely.
there.
I mean, it's a real quick story. My wife gave me this book for Christmas. It's an older book called Skunk Works. It's all about Lockheed Martin's special development company when they're making up these U-2 bombers, they're making up these stealth fighters, etc. The guy who started it was Kelly Johnson, I think, and that was his philosophy. The engineers were right next to the guys building the thing.
Yeah,
When the guys building the thing had an issue, the engineers are just right there.
that's
And
right.
then those guys can walk the floor, they can figure it out, they can make the adjustments like that, as
Yeah.
opposed to separated. Oh man, that's so good.
And also one more recommendation for a book, if you haven't read it yet, a very good one for your position is Making Common Sense Common Practice by Ron Moore.
Okay.
It is a Ron Moore is a legend in the
Awesome.
maintenance and reliability community, and he wrote a book, and it's about reliability, leadership, management, and the tools to effectively understand maintenance and lead it. And the reason I recommend that book is because it has a lot of stories in it.
Great. I love stories.
Another good one is, of course, is making maintenance and reliability best practices by Ramesh Galati. He's a friend of mine. He's part of Reliability X. George Williams, good friend of ours. So yeah, Make Common Sense, Common Practice by Ron Moore. Awesome book. It's a good
That's
one.
awesome.
Josh,
That's awesome.
it's been an absolute pleasure, brother.
Likewise, man.
Tell us if people would like to get a hold of you about car washes, leadership, raceway, expansion, special, whatever. How can people get a hold of you? What's the best way? Don't put your cell phone number on here.
Yeah, no, no, that's great. Best way is probably email. Email J Perrault, so JPERRAULT at racewaycarwash.com. and that's the best way to get a hold of me, honestly.
Awesome. Josh, again, I can't thank you enough for not only being an Upkeep customer, but being a valuable leader for your team, and actually taking the time to do the right things first. It's more uncommon than you would think, honestly.
Mm.
Even in large organizations, we have pharmaceutical companies that have no maintenance plan at all. Think
Mm.
about that.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Um, so again,
I
thank you.
appreciate what you guys do, man.
Yeah,
You guys are a significant asset to us in what we're doing.
yeah, no worries, man. We're glad to help. We're always here. On behalf of Upkeep, thank you, and thank you from me. And we will see you on the next one, Josh. Thank you, man.
Brian, thank you.
Very welcome.